So today I'll be talking about my career from Japan to the international affairs space and diplomacy. So first, a little bit about myself. As Rose mentioned, I'm currently a Foreign Service Officer with the U.S. State Department. For those of you who don't know, this is our country's oldest cabinet agency, founded in 1789. And Foreign Service Officers represent the U.S. abroad at 271 posts worldwide, and also at our headquarters in DC. So I just joined last year, and I'm currently in my first assignment at our embassy in Seoul as a staff assistant, where I directly support our ambassador and deputy chief of mission, who is actually also a jet. We have at least 5 jets that I found in our embassy, which I think is pretty cool. I am a DMV native from Maryland, Bethesda. And before I joined the department, I worked in a couple different industries. I was in think tank, I was in private sector with government relations consulting, and also teaching through the JET program. So a little bit about my experience with Japan. Up top, I also want to say that being exposed to studying Japanese at an early age absolutely impacted my decision to major in international relations and pursue this career. So my mother, who's from Thailand, was actually a MEC scholar. She was able to get her PhD in Japan through a scholarship. And so she was always very supportive of me studying the language. And thankfully, my high school offered it. So I started studying it during my sophomore year. And then the summer after that, I got a scholarship through a wonderful program called Youth for Understanding to study abroad in Okinawa for 6 weeks. And I think that was absolutely a pivotal experience in my life where it built so much confidence for me in teaching me that I could be thrown anywhere in the world really and survive, which is kind of what the Foreign Service does to you. It also improved my Japanese so quickly in a short period of time. I absolutely believe that immersion is the best way, the fastest way, the most effective way to learn a language. And that really built, I would say, my connection with Japan, Japanese culture, Japanese language. So I continued studying it in undergrad, not all the way through, but I always was looking for ways to maintain that connection. So I interned at a law firm in Tokyo one summer. And then after that, I applied to the JET program where I was in ALT for 1 year. I wish I'd done it for longer, but I had committed to a grad school already. So came back to DC for grad school. And then during that time, also served on the board of the JET Alumni Association of DC, which is how I became connected with the Japanese embassy, which is amazing and really great at connecting all of us. Next, I just want to build on that and reflect on how the soft skills I developed through studying and working in Japan really served me well in my current job. So I think one big skill is cultural adaptability. So like I mentioned, in the Foreign Service career, you have to basically uproot yourself every 2 to 3 years, move from country to country and operate in new environments. And I think being able to adapt to different settings is therefore really important. Related to that is context-based communication. So Japan is often described as a high context culture compared to the US low context, where a lot of messaging is actually in what is unsaid and in nonverbal cues. And so being exposed to Japanese culture, I think taught me how to read between the lines. And I think that's important because if you think about love languages, it's kind of like that, where everyone has different communication styles, and how effectively you communicate depends on how well you know your audience. So you can have the best message in the world, but if your counterpart doesn't care, or if it doesn't resonate with them, then you might as well not be saying anything at all. And so you have to figure out how to make them care, and that requires understanding their incentives, which is also related to anticipating needs. So there's a concept in Japanese called kizukai, which directly translates to being attentive or considerate. But I think it also involves, going above and beyond to make your counterpart really feel like you're listening to them with empathy. And that's related to, understanding them based on these cultural cues that you've learned. And then, of course, teamwork, where I think working with people that have different worldviews and different upbringings really helps build your own communication, adaptability skills, and emotional intelligence. And so next, I actually just wanted to focus the bulk of my presentation on the advice for you. So the first one is to study abroad. I won't beleaguer the point because I know the previous panelists have mentioned this, but just do it. So Japan is great. I did it in Japan, but it can literally be anywhere. So in undergrad, I actually had the option of going to Madrid or to Kyoto, and I actually chose Madrid because at that point I'd been to Japan and I wanted to push my boundaries, be somewhere where I didn't blend in as much. And that was also a really great experience. So I would say definitely just try. And here I just want to highlight all of the scholarship programs that are available out there. I sent the link to the coordinator, so they'll post it in the chat, but there are scholarships um, both for summer study as well as that will fund your graduate study. So NCLE is great if you're in high school, and then if you're in or thinking of applying to graduate school, the Bourne, CLS, FLAS. So again, I think studying abroad really, I remember writing in my JET application that studying abroad in Okinawa at that time gave me a different lens with which to see the world. And people say that you have different personalities speaking different languages. And my friends who have young kids say that when they take their kids abroad for the first time, they come back, learning new words, new motor skills. And that might be a little bit simplified, but I think it's the same where if you don't put yourself in a new environment, you won't really know what you can unlock. So I think studying abroad is really great and everyone should do it. The second piece of advice I have is to learn how to ask good questions. So I think oftentimes the advice is to learn how to network, but I don't think that's actually a very useful way of seeing things, because I think the core of it is learning about people and their stories. So I used to not like the term networking because I thought it felt too transactional. But if you view it as you're trying to learn more about this person that you're talking to, as opposed to like, I'm going to talk to this person with the goal of asking them for a job at the end, then you actually get a lot more of that interaction. And so some examples for me in terms of what I view as good questions are, if you're speaking to someone who is in a role that you see yourself wanting to go into in a couple of years, you can ask them, what was your favorite thing about this job or this internship that I saw you did based on doing my research on your resume? And why was that? Or what's the best team that you've ever worked on? And I also like to end every conversation by asking them, is there anyone else that you recommend that I speak to after talking to you? And I think, thanking someone for their time at the end, writing thank you emails, that really goes a long way. So that would be my advice there, is to view networking as learning about people's stories. And I also think you can be an introvert and still be an effective networker. So I'm an introvert. I've gotten very good at pretending to be an extrovert since high school. But one way I viewed it is, if you're going to a networking event, I would tell myself, go and have two good conversations with two people. And if I feel like my social battery is drained, then I can allow myself to go home guilt-free. If I'm feeling good, I can stay, but I'm going to go and I'm going to prioritize talking to two good people as opposed to talking to as many people as possible. So here, quality over quantity. And this photo here is just in my job when I worked in government relations consulting. So the man in the middle is the former US ambassador to Indonesia. So, through working for him, I learned so much about the Foreign Service. And I got that job through meeting the man on the right, who was a great mentor for me in DC, who I met at a networking event. And then my last piece of advice is to do the side quests. And this is in quotes because I heard it from another event that I went to. And my point here really is that I remember being in high school and being an undergrad and feeling like every decision you make is pivotal, and you have to make the right decision that will set you up for the rest of your career. And if you make one wrong move, then like everything's over. In hindsight, I think that's overrated. And I think that you should worry less about what you should do to further your career, and honestly just pursue what interests you, and the rest will follow. The reason for that being that I think you can learn something in every job, and oftentimes you won't realize how valuable an experience is until later down the road. And so along those lines, I think having role models is important, but don't worry so much about, let me look at this person and try to emulate their exact path, because there are multiple paths to the same destination. And yeah, I would say think about ways to grow in each position and experience you're in when you're building your resume. So you don't want every position you've been in to have the same job description. Otherwise, someone might look at that and they'll think, oh, what has this person learned? Yeah, so I again just want to thank the Japanese embassy for this event, and Kizuna Across Cultures. So the photo from the bottom is at a event I organized with the JET alumni community at the State Department, which is very robust. So we did a career panel there. And then the top photo is from actually last weekend, where in Busan, there was an inaugural youth summit between leaders from Japan, South Korea, and the US that our ambassador spoke at. That was really cool to see. And I think there's ways to stay involved in Japan, even if your career doesn't involve it directly. So thank you so much. Really looking forward to your questions. And my email is here if anyone would like to reach out.